This is my pre-go live dance. I feel like a lot of my go live videos start, which we're live, by the way, with Deb bopping back and forth. All right, now I'm going to click on Instagram. Yay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, whether you are here live or you are here watching the recorded version. We are very grateful to you for letting us be a part of your day. And we're confident that something that one of us says is going to be meaningful to you and impact you in a way that's going to be helpful to your forward momentum. So I am here with Brittany and Jake. I will, after they talk a little bit about themselves and what they do, tell you a little bit of my view of them and my entry into their life from my perspective, and kind of segue that into the conversation. But we share a lot of different overlaps in our personal and professional lives right now, which is fantastic. And this is my first 2 people at a time interview. So I love it. And I'm sure that everybody that's watching will see the way that the 2 of you feed off of each other when you're sharing information. So I'm excited. So why don't you go ahead and tell everybody who you are, what you do, in whatever order you want to do that. And then we'll chat.
Oh, me first? I thought you were going to start. We are Brittany and Jake LoGrasso. Very quickly, we are high school sweethearts. We're best friends. You will see that through any interaction you have with us, whether personal or professional. We are entrepreneurs and we love working together. People ask us, like, do you guys actually like working together? We love being married and we love working together. First and foremost, we have a marriage podcast called the Choosing Us Podcast. It is completely unscripted. So if you like the banter that happens in our little screen, that more of that is on the podcast. But we also have a boutique marketing agency, and Jake is a marketing genius in his own right. But we
no, you go ahead.
We are half and half of the equation. And so we pull from each other's strengths, and we really do that through everything we do.
Yeah. Brittany's social media queen and can and do all things social media. And you can just look at her profile and see that. I am a StoryBrand certified guide, so I really focus on messaging and frameworks, but we just love strategy. We love partnering with people. And our main goal, our cream of the crop is really when we get to help people transform our lives. Like, that is what we love to do. We love people who want to help people, right? Because anybody could just look at revenue. Anybody could just want to sell things, but we want to sell things that actually make an impact in culture, in our daily life, whatever that looks like. And so we have amazing people we get to partner with and do that. And Deb is one of them.
Yes, Deb's one of them. And it's been so fun working with Deb, but she's been such a great cheerleader for us too, and everything we do from marketing to marriage stuff. We love encouraging people no matter where you're at.
Yeah. And we have a dog. We don't have kids. We have a dog. She is a 4-year-old, 120 pounds. As of
we went to the vet on Monday.
That was new. She gained like 20 pounds. But she's a Great Pyrenees. And so she is most of our time outside of
work.
Outside of actually doing productive things.
She's currently behaving, so we're happy for that, because she's munching on something yummy. So a couple things that I want to kind of say too that you didn't mention, probably because it's not something you would normally say about yourself, is, and I've talked about this in front of you, both on a personal and professional level. I kind of think of it as there's like 3 different types of communication and relationships. There's a relationship with Jake, there's the relationship with Brittany, and then there's the relationship with Jake and Brittany, and together as a couple, right? Yeah. And all of those things are awesome individually, right? And then you put the whole compact thing together. I think like you're both, you complemented each other. I thought that was beautiful that Brittany, you're calling out Jake's strengths, Jake's calling out your strengths. I think that's a perfect example that you complement each other strategically. You complement each other on the interrelational type of things and the communication that goes on. And so that's just been really, I think for me, awesome to watch, because that's not just setting examples for couples. It's setting examples for people on how you interact and collaborate and cooperate with each other, right? Yeah. It's not I'm here and you're down below or up above me. But how can we both bring each other forward? So that's just something that I really want to call out, and it's going to come out, I think, in the conversation. So I've admired kind of getting to know that. And my initial relationship or interaction with Jake and Brittany came from the fact that we were in a group together, and I happened to see some things on Brittany's social media that struck me, reached out to her, we started talking, and it was pretty quickly that we realized that our messaging resonated with one another and we were going to be able to do great things together. And then of course, Jake came into the picture as well. And that just furthered that notion. But as you said, I do work with you. That's relatively recent and extremely exciting for me. I've been able to recommend people to you because I think highly of you both as individuals and what you do. And then in working with some clients together and watching what you do, I knew it was going to be important. And before I kind of ask this next question, my brain just went blank. I want to talk about the story branding session that we just did, because I think that that's important and it all ties together. And so here I've been doing business for years and years, worked with hundreds of companies and done all of these different things. And yet that session with you, when we did the story branding, was making me realize the way that I could phrase things and say things in a succinct and clear way that felt impactful, it felt clear, and that's really hard. And in order to be able to help somebody to do that, you have to be really good at listening and really good at meeting somebody where they are, because you're not going to be able to do things the exact same way with every particular client. Yeah, and so I'm kind of curious because, again, there's Brittany, there's Jake, and there's Brittany and Jake. When you're working with a new client, how do you kind of figure out together what is going to be your role? What is going to be my role? How are we best going to work with this client? Is it very strategic and you sit down and you talk about it, or is it more a natural flow?
Definitely more of a natural flow. I think we know, one of the first things we did when we, previous to getting married, actually, we've always been to conferences. We know that like we want to water our own grass. We want to have a flourishing and thriving marriage. In order to do that, you have to invest in it, right? And so we've always done these marriage conferences, going through books. We actually did long distance from Dallas to Japan for a year and a half. That was a lot of fun, and 14-hour time difference. But one of the things that we did in that, we can go so deep into our relationship, but I'll give you the succinct context for this chapter. Was we had just actually gotten back together, and then Brittany found out her family was moving to Japan. And she's like, we don't have to do this. And I'm like, no, we're doing this. Like, this is a great time. Like, this is go time.
And it was also only supposed to be 6 months. So I was like, 6 months, I can travel. Like, you can do school. But then it ended up being another 6, a total of 18 months. And what we really learned is we grew together, but we were very intentional about our own personal growth. So I grew up in a household that was very much about leadership, personal growth, really assessing where you're at, and taking responsibility for whatever it is, whether that's school or work or, I danced in school. So it was like not, I'm going to compare myself to the next one. It's what can I do to sharpen my skills? And so we've taken that into our professional life. We took that into our relationship. And really, it's not pointing the finger of, you do this, I do this. It's really, how can we bring our strengths together? And how can we operate in each of our strengths? And then when we come together, we have synergy. So when we get a new client or we work with someone new or a new couple, we draw from each other's strengths. And it's not you do this because I can't do it. Like I could do website stuff. Like for a long time, I did internships and running analytics and stuff. And I still love the analytical side. Yeah. But there are times when Jake knows I'll want to throw my computer out the window because there are just some things I can do. It's just tedious.
I mean, whoa, what happened? Oh, sorry.
Oh, we're getting a call. So sorry. Okay, we're back.
I didn't know what happened. All of a sudden you're like, and I'm like, you're leading in.
I'm like, our faces. Okay, we're good.
I see your faces. You never went away.
So where I was going with that was Brittany, Bridge the Gap. But we went through a book called Strengths-Based Marriage. And so it's really combining StrengthsFinder, but also like your personalities and passions and things like that. And I'm huge into personality tests. I want to be very self-aware, know my blind spots, know my, strengths, weaknesses, all those things. But like Brittany said, at the end of the day, we know how we operate. I've said it 1,000 times and I'll always say it. Brittany is my favorite subject to study because I want to know I want to know how she operates. I want to know what drains her, what gives her energy, what gives her life, and all those things. And in doing so and working together, we just kind of naturally find that rhythm with everybody, right? We definitely know, I am the messaging guy. I am, I guide those sessions. I have management experience. I have that kind of guiding through the process journey. But Brittany, as you saw, adds so much value and context throughout those conversations. And in any context, it is very good to have the masculine and feminine polarity. Yeah. And so a lot of our clients are female or female led or whatever it is. And so having that context, I could not do what I do without Brittany.
Well, even last night, perfect example. I went to dance just to we've been in transition. We didn't mention this, but we just moved our entire life from Dallas, Texas to Las Vegas.
That was in the bio. Everybody read the bio.
Well, and maybe not. Maybe someone's recording live.
I was going to mention that anyway, so I'm glad you brought it up.
So in that time, I'm not proud of us. We're former personal trainers and athletes, and like we've done some crazy stuff. I just took off.
We are not former athletes.
Okay, we are athletes.
We are active.
I took off a few months from the gym and dancing and all things, and I was like, it's not going to be pretty, but I'm just going to go back. And that part of my brain needed like the creative juices flowing and moving. And Jake's texting me, we're working on a mutual client that we have. He's like, I need my creative genius home. Like I can't figure this out.
Yeah. Like I know Brittany is just really good with graphic design and those things. I can do it. It is not my strength. And honestly, by the time Brittany got home, like she didn't change very much of what I did, but I just know like that's not me operating in my strength. That's me operating to achieve a goal. Right. And like, that's challenging for me. So it's like, if Brittany was there, it would have been so much easier, but you know, she came, she made it even better than what I did. And you know, it was great.
And the analogy with that is like, why push against a force? Like, it's like you're going upstream or downstream. Like you're either going to go with the current and go with your strengths and flow with it, or you're just going to fight this. Like, I can't do it. I'm not strong in this. I hate this, when you could just ask someone else for partnership.
Yeah. And last thing I'll say on this one question, Deb, is
I love it. No, I love it.
I mean, that's the perspective we really have with marriage, right? Because we know like it's so easy to have differences equal conflict. Like, oh, I want Brittany to be more like me. Oh, like Brittany does this, this, and this. And like, like, you know, like it can so easily lead to conflict. It can so easily lead to divisiveness when like, man, I need everything Brittany has. Like, she's definitely not perfect. You know, she, you know, has her flaws. As
I really like to sleep in too.
Oh my gosh. Which I'm up every morning, early. Anyway, I really need everything that Brittany has, right? All of her strengths, she fills something that I can't, right? And vice versa. And so like having that perspective of, oh, she's actually complementary. It's not divisive. It's not conflict. It's something that when she brings everything she can, I bring everything I can, it's exponentially greater than anything we could bring individually.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, because really when you think about it, a family unit, a couple, you know, whatever the relationship is that we're talking about really does function very similar to the way that a company functions. You've got to understand where your strengths and weaknesses are and being willing to think outside the box, right? So you had a task, Jake, and that task was yours, and you could have very easily kind of said, like, I need to go through this and figure this out because this is my part. This is the thing that I'm supposed to do. But title or role doesn't necessarily define or determine what decisions you're going to make or what guidance you're going to get, and being willing to ask people for that. So I love that you do that as a couple, but I also think that's just really important for people to recognize as a team. Yeah, right. Yeah. And that's when we ask each other, when we take those times to survey and go like, what are the things that you think you're good at? What are the things you think that you enjoy doing? And we find areas where we wouldn't have realized we could ask somebody for help or for guidance. And the other part that I really love about what you said is, and obviously specifically as a couple, when you said, you know, Brittany's my favorite subject to study. And I think that's another thing too, that comes from a place of service that you both have as individuals, and that carries over into your work. Service doesn't mean doing something for somebody without compensation, right? And I think sometimes we think that it has to mean that services means you have to be doing something for free. You can be of service to somebody while you're getting paid because you're taking time to really consider what is going to be mutually good for everybody involved, right? What is going to move the process forward? And you do that in your work, and you lean into that, and you practice that with each other and figuring those things out, right? I love that when I asked you before, like, you know, did you kind of know who's going to talk when? Or you're like, nope, we're just going to wing it. And you generally do, because you do have some good ways of feeding off of each other and reading each other's body language. And that's a tricky skill set to have, but that's what makes you good at marketing and story branding, is understanding that there's those subtleties that you have to take the time to pay attention to in order to really get the message straight. You can't just pull from the toolbox. You've got to take a moment to consider what's going to work best in this situation. Yeah. So you mentioned moving to Las Vegas. I want to talk a little bit about that, because obviously having done growth and change consulting, right, and worked with a lot of individuals and organizations that are like, I don't want to go through change. You guys were like, let's see how many changes we can pack into a small.
No idea,
You literally have no idea.
And yeah, so I think I want to, I mean, and maybe you just kind of want to share openly, but I mean, I'm thinking about what does that look like? And maybe as you're talking about it again, you can use it specifically as it applies to you too. But I think I want the audience to think about how that can apply to our lives when we encounter those things, because any one of those changes could have felt too big to make, and yet you made them and you kept moving forward because you knew that it was part of something else. So like, how did you decide to make the changes? How did you get through the changes? I know there was some, things that unfolded as you were doing it. Like, what was that process like for you?
Yeah. Good if I start?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So ultimately, this last 6 months has really been just stepping by faith in everything we do. And so our heart and passion is to really help other people, right? To transform our life and all those things. So we felt a calling we kind of started looking this way in December. Brittany can explain the full story, but we started looking this way in December and like, maybe Vegas is a thing. And then we just kept praying about it, kept seeking, kept knocking, and like, is this the thing? Like, why does Vegas keep coming up in every single day, in every single contest we go? We go to the gym, it's there. Yeah. I go on a run, somebody's wearing a Raiders hat in Dallas. I'm like, that's weird. And like, literally just like all these signs just like keep pointing to Vegas. And I'm like, why? And so we just like, okay, like we feel like this is the next step, which also I left my full-time job in March and really stepped into doing marketing full-time and all those things. I was really doing it for a while full-time. I was basically working for 2 full-time jobs. That's a separate story. But we felt that I needed to leave my job and step out in faith. And I was like, okay, God, that's what I'm doing. Step out in faith. Felt like we were supposed to move to Vegas. We're like, okay, God, we're going to do it. We're stepping out in faith. We know that when we are, we're very upfront that we believe in God, that we have a faith that drives everything we do, right? Our pastor at our previous church, he said, what looks like risk to us is obedience to God. Mm-hmm. So like when you feel like God is calling you to something, when you feel like something has been placed in your path that looks scary, that looks like, this is a jump from one mountain to another, though that may be what it is, that there's purpose and plan in that, right? There's going to be a reward that you reap from doing that, right? And it's not just about, the materialistic things that people think about immediately, but ultimately the impact and all those things that we're going to have, right? So we've been talking about our marriage platform, that this is like something that we have been building. We started our podcast in December. We are in the process of relaunching it because we have been moving and doing all the things.
It took a 3-month hiatus, or maybe 4 now.
March. And
our last episode was in February.
Okay.
Anyways.
Almost there. Then you can talk. We are building this marriage platform, right? And so like we end up realizing that Vegas is next, right? So we're like, okay, but why? That's the next question. Like, why Vegas? We have 0 family there. Like we have 1 connection there. Like, what is the purpose to move to Vegas? And so we're actually we're on a trip here prior to actually moving here. We're having coffee with some friends and they're marriage coach as well. So we're just talking about marriage and all the things and like, what they've done, their journey and our journey and all that stuff. And then we're sitting there talking, and then another couple walks in and like kind of hears us talking. So then the husband comes over and kind of stands next to us. We're like, hey, what's up? And he's like, oh, I just heard you guys talking about what all you're doing, and how God brought you here. Like, are you going to a church? And so we tell him his wife is actually on staff at the church that we end up going to, right? So it's just crazy. And they're actually building a platform for basically restoring family, right? So our perspective is like the reason we are so passionate about marriage is because our generation has had dysfunction as a model. And dysfunction will only breed more dysfunction unless the cycle is interrupted. And so we really want to interrupt that cycle because we believe marriage is one of the greatest blessings that we can have. We believe marriage brings out the best in us, as you see, right? As that should be evident in our conversation. But like we believe there is just exponential impact in our individual lives, in our community, in our city when we have strong families. Yeah. And so it all starts with the marriage. So it's just funny how we're all in Vegas, which I consider the heart of the kind of non-committal marriage. People just, get married off a whim in Vegas. And it's just ironic.
There's shows, songs. People think Vegas and you're like, oh, everyone's getting married at a white chapel by Elvis. But it really is like, we truly believe like everyone can have a true forever honeymoon. Like people see us for a while. people know that we're like so in love. It's disgusting. And I don't think it's disgusting. I think it's really sweet. But people would be like, every time I posted him, my engagement did better. I'm like, why does my engagement do better when I post any marriage content? And so I started leaning into it because people want that. You know, they want that fairy tale, that forever honeymoon. I'm not saying it's not hard I'm not saying there's not hard seasons. Like the whole marriage is hard just needs to be done away with, because if you label something hard, then that's all you're going to see. And so there are hard parts of marriage and there are some conflicts, but you can work through that. You can have tools in your tool belt to work through that, but you don't have to label something hard. If you keep saying it's hard, then like, what are you going to get? It's going to be hard. I mean, when we first got married, there was another couple that got married around the same time as us. And mind you, we got married right before COVID, just a couple months before COVID, December 2019, just skirted right in there. And every time Jake would, you know, call a buddy of ours and they had just recently got married, he would just be like, it's hard. We're like, okay, like it can't be. I mean, there are differences, like maybe cultural differences, maybe learning each other. I get that. And I know we had 6 years under our belt and we had done some things that most normal couples wouldn't have done. But at the same time, like, how hard can it be? Like, this should be the happiest time of your life. And like, it just, we had a lot of fun. We just have a lot of fun together.
I love Brittany's passion. But I think at the same time, people hear that and be like, yeah, but you guys have, you know, you guys don't know. Like, you haven't been married. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what we're going through, which, you know, that's one of the frustrations that I was going to say is like, yeah, we are about to be 5 years married. So we're getting to that point where like, we're not newlyweds anymore, which I'm like, you know, people can't just say it's the newlywed, you know, vibe.
But we'll forever be newlyweds. Yeah. We'll act like it.
But I think that really, so one, as I said earlier, like we really need to water our grass, right? You can't go into the gym and expect to lift all the weight without training, right? It goes through a process. You go through a refining process as you build muscle. We're certified personal trainers as well. And so it takes time, it takes dedication, it takes discipline. As you're going to the gym each day, you may hurt yourself one day. You may strain a muscle. You may drop a weight on your foot. You may, you know, have really bad form initially because you don't know what you're doing. And unless one, you get coaching or training or seek education outside, which there's so much education for anything online these days, or two, you actually have to put in the work and the effort. You can't go to the gym and look at everybody and then come out stronger. Right? Like you actually have to work on yourself. You actually have to go through a refining process. So that's one thing really that is important for us to take ownership of, to take ownership of our growth and our joy and our happiness. Right. And I think the end goal is not to say that, oh yeah, we're living and, you know, every day is, you know, just a happy bubble. And like, you know, we're just unicorns and rainbows. But like we have a client we're actually just doing a messaging session with as well. And we got to the point where her goal for her clients was really to see that throughout life, whatever daily life throws at you, that you can have a joy that surpasses that, right? That the past traumas, that the past heartaches, that the past brokenness doesn't have to define your future, doesn't have to define your current circumstances. And I think that's the vision, that's the goal, right? Yeah. It's not just that marriage isn't hard, it's that it is something great. Like I said, work can be hard if we are in, you know, if we don't maximize it, right? If we're not using our gifts, if we're not operating in all those things. And if we just have that mindset, like, you know, oh, I have to work for the rest of my life. What if I get to work for the rest of my life? What if I get to impact people the rest of my life? What if I get to have a thriving marriage, right? And like just having that like the perspective is first key, right? We need to have that proper perspective before we can actually have any transformation at all. So went off multiple tangents there. I could have just kept going, but I'm going to reel myself in now, Deb, and let you guide the.
Well, here's the thing, right? So there's 3 things you said in there that I actually that are essential to all changes, right? Process, intention, and a focus on the joy. And focus on the joy can get misunderstood, but I think you did a really great job of the way you defined that. It does not mean when you say focus on the joy, and interestingly, I posted about this yesterday, focusing on the joy doesn't mean that you're just like, oh, I'm going to be kind of naive and pretend that everything is good and that there's no challenges that we have to face. It means looking at what can come from the situation that you're in at that moment, right? As a company, as an individual, as a couple. Right. So it's that taking time to recognize that the joy is the owning that I can take this situation and do something with it that's going to have a positive influence. And sometimes the greatest positive influence we're having in that isn't necessarily something we're going to feel. It's going to be the impact we're going to have on somebody else. Yeah. Right. But it doesn't make it any less of a joyful occurrence because it's creating good. But the process and the intention. Right. And really essential for relationship building, really essential for any type of change. It does not mean that the process isn't going to have to be modified or adapted as things come up that were unexpected, but it means that you have in place something that you know that you're going to continue to do. Now, understanding, right? Like you talk about like, oh yeah, we let the conversation flow. And so there are definitely parts where you guys are very flexible and it's free flowing, but you are both very mindful of what you need to pay attention to and making sure you do that. And that's that process and that intention piece, right? That you're not going to let things fall aside. And sometimes it's as simple as like, I'll say to my husband, we'll notice we're getting really busy. We've got 3 teenagers, we're working, with clients. And I'm like, we haven't sat down in the last couple of days and just talked. So like, we're going to sit on the front porch or sit on the couch right now and have a conversation. Yeah. Even if there was nothing we specifically needed to discuss, because you need to make that focus. And that's what companies need to do. And that's what individuals need to do. Take that time to be very mindful of what are the things I'm making sure are taking place so that the end result, the bigger impact, which is what you guys had to think about when you're like, oh yeah, Jake, just leave your job. Let's move across the country. This is, like sunshine, like you said, I think unicorns and rainbows, right? Yeah. But you weren't thinking about those pieces, but you were being intentional and you were thinking about the process. You were thinking about the joy, the bigger impact that was going to happen. And I think that's the journey, like you talked about with your client. That's the journey that you're taking people through when you're story branding and when you're doing social media. It's strategic, but it's strategic for impact, whatever that impact is that you want to make.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that you said intentionality, because I think so many people, regardless of any area of life, any industry, they're just like haphazardly letting things happen and just kind of like in reactive mode. And I think like not long ago, people were intentional with their work, with their career, with what they ate, with their relationships, with their marriage, with family time. And I think and it's ever evolved, and I'm sure technology doesn't help with it,
Absolutely.
Getting stuck in the scroll hole and, being online and making sure everything looks perfect, or like, am I keeping up with the Joneses? But I think when you get to the heart of it, everyone wants someone or people who are going to be intentional with them. And you have to get into a place where you take that heart posture as well. And you're intentional first, because it's reciprocal. A marriage takes 2 people being intentional. A thriving company takes 2 people being intentional. And something, I don't know why we didn't mention or just hasn't come up yet, but we, I know you look surprised.
Excited for this.
We've like kind of said we operate kind of like a company in the sense that we have something we do every week. It's called a weekly huddle guide. And because we work together and because we're married and because there's like household things and then business things, you have to talk about it all, because things can get slipped through the cracks all the time. Yeah. And one of those things on that huddle guide, it goes through like groceries and like, who are we eating out with? Do we need to make dinner this time? Like all through the nitty gritty, plus conversation. Like, are we scheduling our date night? If date night is it fancy? Is it like a night on the couch? Like date night can look different in different seasons, but then also it gets to the heart of like making sure we see each other and we're answering questions and like talking and opening up dialogue. And that goes back to intentionality. Like something as that makes us think is like, is there anything I need to apologize for that I did this week? Is there anything that you're like harboring? Can I help you with something this week that's like really weighing on you? Is there anything that just like feels like a burden that I can just like help shoulder for you? Yeah. And those are pretty much the 4 questions that we start out with. And that will open up to conversation that's like, hey, I didn't process this all the way. Mm-hmm. This might have happened 4 days ago, but it's really still kind of bothering me. But we have a business, we have a household, and, we don't have kids. We have our toddler dog that is like seriously, she's like sitting over here barking. But we have attention. Yeah, pretty much. We have all of these things. Like, did you call the gardener? Like random things that now we have on our litany of things to do. But it goes back to intentionality of not letting things just like go to the wayside and then we're reacting to 15 things that need our attention. Yeah. But really like, okay, let's sit down and just protect this 30 minutes. And that 30 minutes could protect us from like a blow up later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a lot to add to that.
Go for it.
Intentionality.
Yeah.
I think, no, I'm going to let the conversation keep flowing.
I'd love to hear. So I'm going to say something about intentionality. And if that inspires you to speak whatever was kind of spinning around in there, that piece is the piece, right? So my early consulting, I did a lot of stuff that was project management based. And actually that was really kind of almost my title for a while in terms of like, as a consultant, I did a lot of project management stuff, right? Your plan and your process are nothing if you are not intentional. And a lot of times what happens is you will find in relationships, in companies, in our own personal like life goals, right? We'll think like, I don't know why this isn't working. I have a plan. I have these, I have, I know what I need to do. I have processes put in place, but because we're not being intentional about, first off, making sure that we're consistent, which, right, consistency and intention go hand in hand, and understanding that things and circumstances change, right? So like if you said, I'm going to go outside right now and I'm going to go for a run and this is the outfit that I'm going to wear, and then it starts torrentially downpouring or hailing or whatever, and you're like, I'm just going to stay in what I have in, right? Because like, this is the outfit I laid out. This was my plan. It's not going to fit the situation.
Yeah.
And if you're not intentional, then you're not reevaluating and making sure, wait a minute, something's not working here. And so a lot of times when I'll be working with a company and they'll say, we actually have really good processes documented. We've got really good management people in place and we've got these plans here, but something's not right. And you find out that a part of that process is no longer effective because it's not what's happening, right? Maybe it's, for example, like Joe faxes this document. Well, they don't even have a fax machine anymore because faxes aren't really being used. They still are, but as an example, right? So it's that intentionality piece that holds everything else together because you're being mindful, you're being curious, you're being creative, you're thinking what needs to happen in order for me to make sure that this keeps working, rather than just, saying like, that is a fantastic flow chart, so everything is going to work beautifully now.
Yeah. I think possibly stepping on some toes, but I like to do that sometimes, softly. So I think, Brittany said at the beginning, like with intentionality, like it's so easy in our day and age to get distracted, right? One of my college professors recommended a book. I started it, but it was very like, college-y, right? Very academic. And I'm like, this is not going to function for Jake to actually read. But it was called Entertaining Ourselves to Death. And I don't need to read the book to know to understand it, right? Like our culture, we are entertaining ourselves to death, right? Like we are constantly scrolling, we're constantly on TV, and it's just like, I don't want to live a disconnected life. I don't want to live a life that does not result in impact. Like that is what we are here for. Like we want to change, we're only here for a little bit of time and we want to change as many lives and bring as much impact as we can, right? So we can't do that if we're just constantly on our phone. We can't do that if we're not perfect. We both have kind of, gentle ways of reminding each other, like, hey, hon, let's get off the phone, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, don't get stuck in the scroll. Like, hey, like, did you get stuck?
Yeah.
And so it's so easy for us to do that in our culture. But like, what is that preventing us from doing, right? So one of my previous bosses, very good friends, anytime that one of us like had a new opportunity, we would ask each other what we're not going to do instead, right? So if you get a speaking opportunity, okay, well, what are you not going to do? You're not going to.
What are you saying no to?
Yeah. What are you saying no to? Are you going to not work out? Are you going to not spend time with your family? Are you going to like, what does that result in? And it's like, man, that's just we don't think of the opportunity cost when we get an opportunity. We don't think of the opportunity cost of how we spend our time and day.
Yeah.
It is important to rest, right? It is important to disconnect. It is important to do all those things. But when you have time that you should actually be focusing on impact and intentionality, are you actually? Right. One of my greatest frustrations in general is just inefficiency. Like I just hate when things are not efficient. Like when, like if, I don't know, a cabinet opens the wrong way. Oh my gosh, it is so frustrating for me. Like I'm about to redo some of our cabinets just because you have to go out of the way. I'm like, it's on the wrong side. Like it should just be easily.
I feel you.
Right.
Yeah.
Like things like that. But then all the way to whether it's, how we message things, right? We talked about social media optimization the other day on our call, right? So like, are the funnels built out accordingly so that when somebody sees your account, they know where to go and they get properly, in a place where you can add value to their lives, right? And so it's just like when things aren't lined up like that, it just causes me frustration, right? So having that intentionality to set the intention and to not get distracted and to not be dissuaded from the things we are called to do, right? And so like it's always pushing against, right? Like our natural self, like I have days where I would just love to stay in bed, eat ice cream and like watch TV, right? I love sweets. That's my kryptonite. But I know that's not going to get me to the goals and to the way, to the direction I want to go in my life. And so we have to say no to that. We have to do something hard and, choose to do something that's impactful.
Yeah. I love what you said about inefficiencies. And I don't know why it took me this long for this light bulb moment to go off, but on the StrengthsFinders test, the Gallup StrengthsFinders. Deborah, are you familiar with that test?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So one of my top 5s is Maximizer. And someone told me when I first took the test, they're like, oh my gosh, you have Maximizer. That's like the Midas touch. And I didn't really understand it until after I took the test, and then I started seeing things in my life. So I'm going to try to maximize and squeeze every last juice of the lemon that I possibly can. So like, I always, as a kid, was fascinated by MapQuest. Like I love dragging the thing around, like seeing like where the thing would go. Like I am direction queen if I'm actually paying attention in the passenger seat. But I think this whole, like, you don't like inefficiencies and I'm always maximizing. This can be a point where people love working with us and like, wow, they're so great. Or they're like, wow, they move really fast and they're super intense. And it just, the light bulb just like went off because we feed off of that of each other. So we can like go 0 to 100 very quickly, but we do know how to rest. Like, you know, my favorite way to rest is to bake and to cook and to just like feed people.
Yeah.
I think that's part of like my culture and heritage, but it's just very funny that light bulb went off. So I wanted to share because Deb, you can now say you witnessed a live light bulb moment for me.
Yeah, well, and it's so true. And I mean, because there's a lot of those tests that kind of pull out those different characteristics. But I mean, just from working with you, just from interacting with you, even prior to us having had any professional opportunities to overlap, right? That desire to like, let me assess this situation and be effective and efficient. Because sometimes what's the most efficient isn't the most instantly noticeable quickest, right? Like you might think like, well, if I do this quickly, then it's going to be more efficient because it's quicker. But like downstream, there's something else, right? And that's where maximization and efficiency go hand in hand, because it's not just about like, how can I do this quickly? It's how can I do this that's going to make the end goal be the most efficient and effective that it can be. And there was something else, Jake, that you said, and you were talking about like the I forget the phrasing that you used, but about the disconnect that we have and a lot of things like that. And I actually was thinking about this the other day because somebody was asking me advice on how to be effective with specific negotiations. It was regarding software contracts and things like that. And some of those details aren't really necessarily relevant. But the point was I was explaining to them that a lot of times we think like, I want to just be really curt and to the point, and we've lost the like, dear Jake, from Deb. Like we've lost a lot of that. Now, in quick moments and when you've got team momentum going, I'm all about like fire those emails back and forth, text messages. You don't need to do the pleasantries. You've already engaged. You're in the moment. That's an exception. But specifically, like in this particular situation we were talking about, they were trying to reach out to somebody at like the customer support type person. I was like, don't overlook cordiality. Like we've forgotten a piece of that. And if you think about sometimes when you get an email from somebody that actually says, dear Jake, dear Brittany, right? And that actually takes a moment to kind of acknowledge you as an individual outside of whatever else is being dressed, it changes the tone. And we have become very much about like, let me just plow, different from what you're talking about with maximization. I'm talking about plow ahead without being intentional.
Right. Yeah.
Right. The bull in the china shop. Right. That used to be the phrase when I was a kid. I don't even know
I still use it.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know.
Sometimes Jake had a college roommate that's like, you do everything aggressively, which is true, but like
it's still true.
There are funny moments from that, but it's just
Brittany asks me sometimes.
That's funny. I wouldn't. Oh, go. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was gonna say that's like it still happens, right? Like Brittany says, like, "Why'd you do it like that?" I'm like, "Sorry, I'm just aggressive." Like,
it's funny though, but I don't see. I see more the intent. I see the aggression. Aggression meaning intense, not aggression meaning like. I hope you all liked my growl. That was just for you. But I see the intention because I think like a lot of times in conversation, you'll go like, okay, let's step back and think about for this minute. Let's not make that decision. So maybe you're like, because you've had to self-correct that, you're good at noticing it when it starts to happen, because that's what I've seen. I've been like, oh, that was good. The way that he just was like, okay, wait, before we do that, let's think about what the other potential options are. That's the intentionality piece that may or may not come out when you're, I don't know, changing the door on the cabinet without considering using a screwdriver. He rips the cabinet door down. It's funny. My nephew, who reminds me a little bit of you, is the same way. And we had to get a new washer and dryer because our washer it was 20 years old. I can't really complain, but we were like, well, the dryer's 20 years old. It's probably coming soon. It was making some noises. So we got a new washer and dryer and we stacked them instead of having them side by side. And normally when they're side by side, washer opens this way, dryer opens this way, so you can move the stuff. But now they're stacked, and he's like, "You've got to change this door. Like, this is gonna." When Jake was talking about the cabinet, he's like, "You've got to change this door. This would drive me crazy." And I'm thinking, like, okay, but it's not like you're doing laundry at my house. But just the reality of it to him was like, I'm gonna come over here and change this door for you.
I don't know if you knew this, but I used to be a professional organizer and work for the Container Store. But how has it been having more space in your laundry room, stacking the two?
I love it. Part of it is our laundry room is like, it's like an entryway from the garage. So when you open the garage door to come into the house, that's the laundry room.
Right.
And so when they were side by side, you're like opening up the door. You didn't have to squeeze through, but like it's like, hello, dryer. Like that's like, welcome home. So like, that for me, just from a mindset thing coming in that way, because like for us, that's the door we're normally coming in through. We're not coming in through the front door. So I think just that. And so we're going to get a cabinet, and I'm being very mindful of like, how can the cabinet be placed so that it doesn't create that clutter?
Right.
Because I do think that, and it's something that I do struggle with, particularly because I grew up in a household where there was a lot of clutter.
Yeah.
And so clutter triggers things for me. And I do have to keep in mind that like clutter, like when my kids were little and toys were all over playing, I'm like, that didn't bother me, but I do have to keep in mind that maybe things aren't always going to get picked up as quickly as I would like. So that's something I have to be intentional about. But when you declutter, you feel better. Like there's no debating that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I want to take that analogy to like, it's still the same, it's different. Like washer dryer got an upgrade, but now they're stacked on top of each other. And I think sometimes in business or in life or in relationships, you have to like take what works, kind of flip it upside down or right side up,
stack it on top of each other.
And you have to like, you're like, okay, this is different, similar but different, a little bit more evolved, but it's still serving the same function. And now we can breathe better.
Yeah. I think one of the most important questions for us to ask is why. Like, why are we doing this way? Is it because we've always done it? Because like, is it because it's easy, or is it because it's impactful? Like, is it serving the end goal, right? And then if that's individually, if that's in your relationship, if that's in your business, like we need to ask why we do certain things, right? And sometimes those things need to change. Sometimes it's okay for them to stay the same. Like I'm not about, I'm not about just going in and flipping everything just because. Like, let's change the things that actually need to change, right? Like what's serving the end goal.
Yeah, I think you can take that a step further in like with conflict. So many people, you just see something or an email comes across your desk or something happens in the house and you're both just like, now the bottle rockets have just like fired off and everyone's ready for war. But the thing is you have to ask like, why did this happen? Like this person probably did not have the intention of, oh yeah, I'm just totally going to mess up 50 people's day in the company because I made a decision. They probably didn't think all the way through or to the end goal. Or if something happens, like it's not that someone wanted to load the dishwasher wrong. I know a lot of couples fight over the dishwasher. It could have been, I wanted to help clean up so you didn't have to, but now because I did it wrong, now we're fighting. Yeah. I think having a posture, like instead of being so quick to respond, and this is a muscle you have to build because especially if it's reactive and a little volatile or whatever the company or family culture is you have to stop and just like take 5 seconds to breathe and just process and say, okay, this probably wasn't intentional. No one's going to say like, I intentionally loaded the dishwasher wrong or put all the plates, in the wrong order just so that you could be mad. There's usually a different intentionality behind it, but we can all take that lesson and just say, okay, let me take 5 steps back and see bigger picture and have a conversation versus like, all right, we're going to war.
Yeah. There's so many amazing things that you said. And like everything you say, I'm like, there's something else I can add. But one of my favorite Key and Peele skits is
what was it?
Key and Peele.
Okay.
They're on
Comedy Central. So
yeah.
Okay.
But it's definitely a lot of colorful language. So for any young viewers,
good to know.
It's just so funny because like the one guy, they're texting each other, right? Which great.
So many things get
misconstrued in text, right? They're texting each other, and then one guy's like, sorry, I forget what he said, but like, sorry, I missed something, right? And then the other guy is just like super frustrated, right? And then he's like, do you want to go right now? And then the guy's like, do you want do you want to go right now? Like he's asking if he wants to fight. The other guy's like, yeah, I can go right now. And he's just like he's just so like not understanding the text. And then he texts back like, yeah, sounds great. The other guy's like, oh my God. Like it's just so mad, right?
That's funny.
Yeah. It's such a good picture of like things get so misconstrued in text, right? Especially relationally, especially like we never have, if there is a conflict, like this needs to be discussed in person.
Yeah,
right?
No
because everything, you like add the period that exponentially.
The worst thing you can text someone is K period.
Yeah. And so anyway, it's just so easy to have those things get out of hand, right? And I think what ultimately underlies all of this is like an attitude of humility, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we need to have you said heart of service, whatever it is, right? So like we just need to have that perspective of being willing to do things just because, right? So like I think one of the greatest missed expectations we place going into a relationship, going into marriage is, oh, now I have somebody to help me with everything I do, right? And so taking dishes, for example, oh, Brittany's going to do all my dishes now. And it's like, that you did all your dishes before you got married. Why do you not do dishes after you get married? Right? Like you took out your trash every single time before you got married when you were single because nobody else was there to do it. Why can't you take out the trash now? Right. And like, yes, we have roles and rhythms and like things that, just chores that each of us like to do, right? There's chores that each of us don't like to do, right? And
you don't have to do the stereotypical roles either. Like, I don't know. Oh, Jake does all of our laundry, and there's a funny laundry story that I'll tell another time because I know we're running out of time. But Jake is like the master of laundry. I can do laundry too. It's just sometimes like
I was gonna go with my passion for vacuuming, but that one works too.
Anyway,
laundry and vacuuming.
We do everything together, but Jake always just happens to do laundry. I like switching laundry. I just don't like the folding of it. I love organizing the closet. I just don't like the folding of it.
It's like wash 40 minutes, dry 50 minutes. Folding 7 to 10 business days.
Yeah. And then I can't imagine like once you have a whole household and you've got like 1,500 people in your house.
Yeah. But point being, right? So it's just so easy for us to change, like to have these expectations when it's like, if I just like shifted this to just, I'm going to, do chores and solve problems around the house, like things would get done so much more efficiently. Right. And so many, like so many conversations that don't need to be had don't get had.
Yeah,
right?
and we both do that. I mean, that's all across the board. Like thinking, what can I do to change or impact this positively? Most people aren't thinking like, how can I impact this badly? But really, you have to think, how can I make a positive change? How can I move things forward? Like, what you do with companies. I think if everyone just took that responsibility in life at all. I mean, it's simple as. This is funny. I follow someone who they post and people send them all the time, like people not putting their grocery carts away. Like it doesn't take very much time to take your cart and put it in the little
You're
spot.
one of those people.
But like, and I get like if you're a mom and you've got twins running around and like, fine. But if you are able-bodied and you are just being lazy and you are saying, oh, that's someone else's job. I'm thinking it's 100 degrees in the desert. This poor person doesn't want to run or walk 15 miles during their day fetching everyone's grocery carts. So I think just as a human, like I'm just going to encourage all humans watching this, just find one thing to like impact positive change.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. I think that the grocery cart is a nice analogy because we can all relate to that. It's a very specific thing and it takes little for us to do that act other than specific extenuating circumstances. And, like you said, the heart posture and really being mindful of that. And I think all of us need to recognize the incredible completeness we each have as individuals alone. And we all need to recognize the completeness that everybody else has as an individual alone. And then we need to recognize the global, the corporate, the family, all of those things that are there together. But it starts with the recognition of like, again, I can do my own dishes. I can take out my own garbage. I can put the grocery cart away, whatever the thing is you can do in your day. So I love that. I do want to, I want to have you guys close with a final thought, which can be funny, inspirational, whatever you want. But before that, I want to make sure everybody knows how to get in touch with you, social media, website, whatever is your preferred method, all of the above. So people can find you and work with you on any of the multiple things that you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think social media is probably the simplest.
Yeah.
Because we have lots of different places you can go from there.
And they're all linked in our personal.
But for me, it's at Jake LoGrasso, LoGrasso. And then I say it like that so you spell it correctly.
That's no shit to anybody.
Like Deb.
And then Brittany's is at Brittany LoGrasso?
Yeah, mine is at Brittany LoGrasso. It's just funny. I have no qualms about people spelling or misspelling my last name. I went from an easy last name, Wong, and then I took my stepdad, but dad's last name to Amoido, and then I went to LoGrasso. So I'm used to having names butchered. It's really okay. People are human. But yeah, everything is linked on there. Our podcast is Choosing Us. You can find it on YouTube, which if you like to watch banter, if you've liked watching this interaction, that is completely...
I've controlled the banter a lot.
What it is.
It depends on the
I'll
situation.
tell a story about that. I am very type A. I seem easygoing and like Deb, I think I do well with change. I don't. I just force myself to roll with the punches because you can't stop change. Like everyone is always evolving, transforming. If you're not changing, you're like dead. So, because we have breath in our lungs and it's a blessing to live life, things are always going to change and move. And so I'm so controlling. We just didn't do our podcast for a while. And I looked at Jake in the car and I said, what if we did it unscripted? My parents have worked together and people love their banter. I've seen them on stage, on calls. I know other couples who work together and they have banter and it's just fun. And we were driving the car and I remember Jake looked at me like I had 5 heads. Like, are you crazy? Like, I'm going to say something off the wall and it might get under your skin, but we're going to have to post it. I said, I do it all the time. I said, sure. And actually one of the first episodes, he said something and he's like, okay, Brittany's giving me the eyeballs. But so our podcast is unscripted and I think we've both come to love it and our 100%. Audience loves it. But it's completely unscripted. We agree on a topic literally probably 5 minutes before recording. I feel like we should get a spinner, honestly, of like topics and then decide on Maybe camera. We should do that. Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Okay, that idea was born on this chat with Deb.
See that?
Yes.
Unscripted. So to be clear, because you said butchering the name, and I just all I just want to be clear on is I know how it's spelled, but I put an O instead of an A, and I don't even know why. I did not mean that. I know you did.
It's because our last name my maiden name was Amoido, and people used to call back when there were landlines.
Which is spelled Amoedo.
People would call, and I understand dyslexia is a thing, but they would ask for Mr. and Mrs. Amoeba. I'm like, this is not a science project. Like, I know you're not real, and I know you don't know us. So no, I did not mean that. But
I know I was being silly. It was funny because the first time that I did it, I didn't realize it. Like I was sending the email, and I was like, oh shoot. And I was like, I even looked at the keyboard. I was like, wait, are O, and I know they're not, but I was like, are O and A anywhere near each other? Like, is there any way that they're not? Like, I'm not sure why, but that it happens. And so then I like joked about it. I was like, oh my gosh, I did it. And then I did it again. Yeah. So it was really funny when I was putting together the cover for this. I kept saying it like literally out loud. I'm like LOGR. Like I wanted to make sure like I had the letters right. So yeah.
All good. All good.
Yeah.
Marketing wise, you can find us, just honestly find our personals and message us. We're cute, and which is funny because we say in story branding,
I'm very curious.
Clear is better than cute. And we took out the E in marked. And then, so marked collab is our
MARKD is what she's saying.
Yeah, MARKD.
That was not clear how you said that.
I'm sorry. Confusing. My brain was like going faster than my mouth. Anyways, just reach out. We would be more than happy to work with you or just instill encouragement. You come to our pages, you'll have fun.
Or if you weren't able to follow any of that, you can reach out to me and I will connect you with which people do. A lot of times, even after people give their social medias, people will reach out and be like, can you just tee up an introduction? So I'm always happy to do that. And as I've done already, I think that, you guys your integrity really speaks for itself. And, obviously you have the skills and wherewithal as well. But for me, integrity is really critical because I've seen what happens when that doesn't exist, in new companies and in companies that have been established for many years. When there's a breakdown in that, it can create just all kinds of issues. And so I admire that a lot. So let's end with final thought from Break. I just gave you I didn't even do that.
Oh my God.
That is our couple name, Deb.
So when we were in high school,
that's been since high school.
Our friends, before we were an item, they would keep calling us Break. I'm like, stop saying that. Like, we're not an item.
Break 2K14.
Yeah. And so that is so funny. No one has called us Break in a really long time.
But the funny thing is I didn't do that intentionally. That was my mouth making things up. I was trying to say Brittany and Jake, and it just decided it was going in one thing. So
amazing.
Say it together, separately, whatever works for you. Funny, inspirational, insightful. Final thoughts for everybody.
My final thought is wherever you're at, don't stay stuck. Like, it can get better if that's life, in your business, in your relationship, in your marketing. Like, don't stay stuck. Staying stuck and not taking the first step, or not, taking that positive change motion forward, is only going to keep you stuck. So don't let the thoughts get out of control between your ears. Just take one tiny step, whatever that looks like for you. Whether that's getting a book, diving into it, or hiring a coach, or whatever. Just don't stay stuck. You can do it. You can make a positive impact, and you have more to give than you think.
Yeah, that's great. Man, I can just talk to us. We have thoughts all the time. But one of those, based off what Brittany said, just making it easy for everybody, make a toward move. So every day you have options to make a move toward what you want or away from what you want. Diet is easy to look at that with, right? It's so easy to want the bowl of ice cream, but does that get you toward the 6-pack, right? And that is simple enough. I'm not going to butcher that point. So make a toward move. And then secondly, just be willing to do hard things. Like, there is so much benefit to actually going through resistance in life. And the best thing that you can give somebody is a healthy you. And so make sure that whatever is required for you to be healthy, whether it's journaling, walking, counseling, we've both done counseling, whatever that looks like, having community is an integral part of that. Make toward moves. Make a move to be healthy so that you can be your best self for somebody else.
I love it. Well, that was a whole bunch of information. So don't stay stuck. Make toward moves. Be willing to do hard things.
Deb's like, I gave you one final.
No, I want to make sure that I'm encapsulating them all in, because I think that was really, so don't stay stuck. Be willing to do hard things. Go toward. There was one more.
Best thing you can give somebody is healthy you.
Yeah.
Resistance is okay, or good for you. And you have more to give.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. Love you both. I appreciate you being here. I'm sure that people enjoyed it. Before I have you say goodbye to everybody, I appreciate everybody that joined us. Whether you joined us for the whole thing or part of it, we do appreciate very much you letting us be part of your day. Anybody want to say goodbye to?
Thank you so much for having us. We totally love this conversation. We love you. We love you as a friend. And to anyone watching this, I hope you gain some insight.
All right. Take care, everybody.
See y'all.